A letter by Bishop Chrysostom, former Metropolitan of Florina, to His Grace, Bishop Germanos of the Cyclades, in response to the latter's open letter. October 20, 1937. To His Grace, Bishop Germanos of the Cyclades, according to the dictates of logic and basic decorum, before printing your response, dated October 20th, and issuing a communique to the Christian flock, you ought first to have directed it to me prior to its publication. But since you did not have the courage or the candor to face me, who am working by the light of day and struggling honorably and sincerely, not to mention with self-denial and self-sacrifice, on the adamantine battlements of the truth and of orthodoxy, you had recourse to publishing your response openly, because you regard the public as easy prey to the nets of falsehood, deception, and slander which you spread, one with all flippancy and dishonesty on the path of your Christian community. We would otherwise pass over this response of yours in silence and disdain, both because for want of courage and candor on the part of the author, it was not sent directly to us, and because it does not provide any new arguments worthy of comment and reply. Were we not afraid that such silence might be misinterpreted by your naive and gullible followers as proof that what you have said for the second time is true and incapable of any contradiction or refutation? Your Grace, at the beginning of your response, you allege that our response to you was not marked by propriety, meekness, or fairness, and that, supposedly looking to Christ, the chief shepherd, as you say, you forgive us for our inappropriate and unfair characterizations of you, and that you are only standing up for the truth and for orthodoxy, believing that it is superfluous for us to say that one does not insult his opponent, but characterizes him justly, when he demonstrates, not through words but through deeds and irrefutable reasoning, that the latter is lying shamelessly, that he is concocting odious and despicable slanders, and that he is misusing divine and sacred canons in order to play the demagogue and to exploit a sacred struggle. We will now prove that your Grace is also lying and dissembling when you assert that you are standing up for the truth and defending orthodoxy. Your Grace, as one who holds a doctorate in theology and a university degree, you surely cannot be ignorant of the following elementary and fundamental teachings of the Eastern Orthodox Church. The divine apostles founded the Church of Christ on earth, equipping and arming her with the power of God and the grace of the All-Holy Spirit, which is imparted to the faithful through the holy mysteries. Consequently, they alone have the right to establish or abolish a church, that is, to declare her heretical or schismatic when she deviates from the Orthodox faith, and to render the grace of Christ and the sanctifying power and energy of her mysteries invalid or inefficacious. This right, that is, to establish or dissolve a church, was imparted by the divine apostles to their disciples, and they imparted it to their successors, and in this way, through succession, this right devolved to the authority of the one, holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church. According to this fundamental principle of the Eastern Orthodox Church, a church only has validity, and her mysteries only have sanctifying grace and energy when she is established or recognized by the Universal Orthodox Church, and she only loses her validity, and her mysteries only lose their sanctifying power and energy when, on account of some wrong belief, she is proclaimed heretical or schismatic by the entire Church, whose authentic opinion and final judgment are expressed by an oecumenical and pan-Orthodox synod. On this question, there is a disagreement between the Protestant Church, on the one hand, which grants this right that pertains to true and correct faith, also to individuals whose personal opinion and individual understanding regarding the mysteries of the faith can serve as a touchstone of divine truth, and the Latin Church, on the other hand, which restricts this right solely to the Supreme Pontiff of the Catholic Church, the Pope, whose opinion on matters of faith, when declared ex cathedra, constitutes the infallible criterion of divine truth and orthodoxy. This is why the Latin Church endorsed as a dogma the infallibility of the Pope when he speaks ex cathedra on matters of faith. This being so, everyone and every local church is Protestantizing or Latinizing when he or it usurps or appropriates the prerogative of a pan-Orthodox synod, and proceeds, on account of an uncanonical decision by a church's ruling synod, to proclaim the latter schismatic and to pronounce her mysteries invalid. In the circumstances before us, the canons allow individuals only the right to disavow the first hierarch when he departs from the limits of the traditions of the Church, and to break off all ecclesiastical communion with him, even prior to a synodal verdict, as well as to denounce him to a pan-Orthodox synod, which alone is competent to try and condemn him, and to proclaim him a heretic or a schismatic. We have done so in accordance with the 15th canon of the First Second Ecumenical Synod. 2. If, in leaving for exile, we called the Archbishop of Athens a schismatic and the Church of Greece schismatic, we used the word schism, not in the sense in which the Church uses it, to indicate a rupture with the Orthodox Church and consequent estrangement from the grace of Christ and the mysteries, but in the sense that, on account of the calendar innovation, the Archbishop of Athens has cut himself and the hierarchy that follows him off from the other Orthodox churches with regard to the celebration of the feasts and the observance of the fasts. This secession by his beatitude and the hierarchy that follows him gives us the right to put forward our personal and wholly individual opinion that his beatitude and the hierarchs who follow him, insofar as they have sundered the unity of the Universal Orthodox Church in the simultaneous celebration of the feasts and the simultaneous observance of the fasts, have forfeited divine grace only potentially, and not in actuality, abiding under the curses and anathemas which the divine fathers of the 7 ecumenical synods hurled against those who violate traditions and move the eternal landmarks which our fathers fixed. But his beatitude and the hierarchs who are of like mind with him will only become actually deprived of divine grace and estranged from the orthodox spirit of the mysteries when they are proclaimed as such, and as schismatics in actuality by a pan-orthodox synod, which alone is entitled to do this, according to the statutes of the Eastern Orthodox Church. For this reason, the divine apostles and the God-bearing fathers, making provision for the salvation of the souls of the faithful, who out of ignorance and in good faith follow the error of the leader of their church, did not make the spiritual welfare of the faithful contingent upon the decision of their first hierarch, but upon the decision of a pan-orthodox synod. They are only condemned to being deprived of the divine grace of the mysteries and to spiritual death when, after the proclamation of their leader as a heretic or a schismatic by a pan-orthodox synod, they continue to maintain communion with him, accepting his blessing as a true and orthodox pastor. But you are not ignorant of this fundamental canonical principle, your grace, and that as a result you are lying when you present yourself as supposedly defending the truth and championing orthodoxy by your proclamation that his beatitude, the Archbishop, is a schismatic, and that the Church of Greece is deprived of the divine grace of the mysteries, is demonstrated by the fact that, in the discussion held at the recent meeting of the Synod concerning rechrisimation of new Calendarists trans, you sided with our opinion, and indeed sharply censured the contrary opinion of the Bishop of Bresthena, who is now your colleague, and with whom you ended up exchanging personal recriminations, calling him a Christmonger. Likewise, in the Church of the Transfiguration, your grace harshly condemned the idea of rechrisimation, explaining in your sermon the meaning of holy chrism and quite correctly characterizing the repetition of it by old calendar priests as uncanonical. In the light of all of this, what is the matter with you, your grace, and by what were you inspired to present yourself as a colleague of like mind with the Bishop of Bresthena, and without first coming to meet with us, such that you denounced us as having allegedly fallen away from orthodoxy, and aligned yourself with the Bishop of Bresthena, who, according to you, is a Christmonger, and with Menesis and Gunaris, whom you portray as pillars of orthodoxy, whereas until very recently you were calling them opportunists and betrayers of the struggle. Likewise, your grace, you dissemble and utter outright falsehoods when you assert that it is unnecessary and superfluous to convene a pan-orthodox synod or a major local synod for the authoritative and definitive condemnation of the calendar innovation by the Archbishop, since the pan-orthodox synods of 1583, 1587, and 1593 condemned Gregorian calendar. And this is so because you know fully well that the aforementioned synods condemned the Gregorian calendar, but that this condemnation concerns the Latins, who implemented this calendar in its entirety, whereas the Archbishop adopted half of it, applying it to the fixed feasts and retaining the old calendar for Pascha and the movable feasts, precisely in order to bypass the obstacle of this condemnation. In view of this, the innovation of the Archbishop in applying the Gregorian calendar only to the fixed feasts and not to Pascha, which was the main reason why the Gregorian calendar was condemned as conflicting with the 7th apostolic canon, is an issue that appears for the first time in the history of the Orthodox Church. Consequently, the convocation of a pan-orthodox synod is not only not superfluous, as your grace declares, ex cathedra, like another pope, but is actually required for the canonical and authoritative adjudication of this issue. This is precisely why the other Orthodox churches which stand on the ground of the traditional calendar have not broken off ecclesiastical communion with the innovating Archbishop, waiting to express their opinion and judgment until a pan-orthodox synod should convene in the future, which alone has the right to try and condemn him if he adheres obstinately to his innovation. And when your grace, like another pope, characterizes us as heretics because we have not proclaimed the Church of Greece, schismatic and her mysteries, invalid on account of the Archbishop's innovation, but have restricted ourselves to breaking of ecclesiastical communion with him even before a synodal verdict in accordance with the 15th canon of the First Second Ecumenical Synod, then you must also proclaim the other Orthodox churches which have not broken communion with the innovating Archbishop heretics twice over, in which case you will be left as the sole Orthodox hierarch, along with your like-minded collaborator, the Bishop of Bresthena. If you take this step, your grace, you put an end to the life and the age-old history of the Orthodox Church, since you are proclaiming all of the Orthodox churches as a whole to be heretical, thereby falsifying the declaration of the Lord to his disciples when he said, "Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world." 3. You see, your grace, to what absurdities and to what an abysmal precipice this reckless and populist policy leads you. For you not only defile the sanctity of our struggle, to serve which we elevated you to the vantage point and honor of a bishop, but you also annul the meaning and substance of the universal Orthodox Church. Likewise, your grace, you knowingly dissemble and lie when you place us in the camp of the holy monasteries of the Holy Mountain, which keep the traditional calendar, but commemorate the new calendarist or ecumenical patriarch in their services. And this is so because you are fully aware that we not only do not commemorate the ecumenical patriarch as a new calendarist or the innovating archbishop, but have also broken off all ecclesiastical communion with these hierarchs who personally bear sole responsibility for the innovation. But you draw this parallel witlessly, your grace, thinking in your superficiality that you might thus provoke the sacred league of zealots of the Holy Mountain, because this association in fact concurs with our canonical and orthodox opinion and has very sternly repudiated and condemned the zealot priests Gideon, Hilarion, and Akakios, who apostatized from us, as well as the separatist bishops of Bresthena and of the Cyclades, for splitting our orthodox segment, and this on the eve of the return to the old calendar by the official church. In the wake of all this, your grace, you have the naivete to say no more than this, to persist in asserting that we split off our orthodox faction to the detriment of the struggle, as though you were its leader when we rose up, and not we who, through all that we maintained, wrote and printed, have upheld the struggle, for the sake of which we sacrificed everything: thrones, pleasures, quietness, home, and relatives, not shrinking from facing these woes of exile, in spite of our advanced age, whereas you have made no noteworthy spiritual contribution to the struggle, which you joined in order to receive the rank of bishop, and to use it for the fulfillment of vainglorious desires and opportunistic purposes. Your grace, you have reached such a degree of madness as to state with mouth wide open and the tongue of their sights for that we have abandoned the flag of our struggle and betrayed it to the Archbishop of Athens. Your grace, we joined the struggle under the banner of the restitution of the patristic calendar to the Church, setting as our primary goal not the creation of a permanent ecclesiastical division, but the pacification of the Church and the union of all Orthodox Christians in the celebration of the feasts. When we raised this flag of Orthodox unity, we proclaimed right from the beginning not only that we would uphold the right-believing authority of the ecumenical patriarchate and the Church of Greece, which the innovators have unworthily upset, but also that we would curb the excesses towards which the calendar struggle was deviating, bereft, as it was, of pastoral supervision by way of the Hagiorite priests who headed it because of a lack of theological and canonical education, uncanonically rechrimating the children of new calendarists, to the detriment of the struggle and to the diminution of its orthodox authority. And not only have we not abandoned this flag, but we have also added both luster and glory to it, and we will also soon unfurl it in triumph by the power of Christ on the orthodox citadel of the ecumenical patriarchate and the Greek Church. Yes, your grace, if the rosy twilight of a new day of the triumph of orthodoxy has begun to dawn in the horizon of the Greek Church, this, by the power of Christ, is due to the Orthodox Christian and truly hierarchical stand that we have maintained towards the official Church and the state, not shrinking from standing up as a hierarch to the force that was used against us, so as not to forsake or betray the glorious and honored flag of orthodoxy and of our Orthodox faith and confession. For your part, your grace, you and your fellow apostate, the Bishop of Bresthena, deluded by the prestige of the episcopal rank, rebelled against us out of lust for power and Luciferian pride precisely at a crucial point of the struggle, in order to divide the unifying Orthodox segment and thereby to thwart the victory and triumph of orthodoxy. But do not fret. The triumph of orthodoxy will soon be celebrated by the entire population in the Metropolitan Cathedral of the Greek Church. By the power of Christ and by the truly orthodox and patriotic desire of our God-protected King and the efficacious leadership of the Greek government, and all of the true Orthodox Greeks will receive the crown of joy and glory as they deserve. Unlike you and your small band of followers who, like the foolish virgins, will be excluded from the Orthodox bridal chamber and will lament in vain your loss of this spiritual joy and delight. 5. Let this be my last word on the subject, your grace, for the satisfaction of the truth, and I pray to God that, in his infinite mercy and forbearance, he may forgive us for the great sin that we committed in elevating you to the rank of bishop, may bring you to your senses and guide you on the saving paths of conscience and repentance, and may at the same time crown our sacred struggle with success through the restitution of the patristic calendar, to the glory of Christ and of his Orthodox Church. Athens, November 9th, 1937, Metropolitan Chrysostomos, formerly of Florina. Editor's Notes 1. There is a word missing from the text, perhaps one that was difficult to decipher, as Father Theodorakos suggests. Angelopoulos and Bastistatos wholly omit in their text The final sentence in which this lacuna appears, the missing word may be something like spread. 2. This synod, to whose 15th canon Metropolitan Chrysostomos also refers in his encyclical of 1944, was held in Constantinople in 861 during the Patriarchate of St. Photios the Great. It is not generally regarded as ecumenical, although legates from Rome did attend one of its sessions. 3 St. Matthew 28, 20.4 Thersites, an Achaean soldier at the siege of Troy, was notorious for his vulgar taunting of those in authority. See Book 6 of the Iliad. 5 CF 3, Matthew 25, 1, 13.